You remember when dinner meant something? Not scrolling through delivery apps or microwaving frozen meals, but actual cooking that filled the house with smells you could follow home from 3 blocks away. The 1970s weren't that long ago, but somewhere between then and now, we lost an entire category of American home cooking. These weren't restaurant dishes tried to be fancy. They were real meals cooked in real kitchens by people who understood that food was about more than just filling your stomach. Let's revisit 25 forgotten country meals from the 1970s that disappeared while we weren't paying attention. Ham steak with pineapple. The Hawaiian pizza debate started here, with 1970s country cooks putting pineapple on ham steaks and calling it fancy. This retro dinner combined salty and sweet in ways that confused and delighted diners in equal measure. Pre-sliced ham steaks, usually from the supermarket deli counter, got laid in a skillet with pineapple rings arranged on top like edible jewelry. Brown sugar sprinkled over everything caramelized in the pan, while the pineapple juice created a glossy glaze. Some cooks added maraschino cherries in the pineapple centers for extra color and sweetness. The whole thing broiled until the edges crisped and the sugar formed a candy-like crust. Served with white rice or mashed potatoes. This delivered tropical vibes to landlocked kitchens across the heartland. The combination tasted like vacation, exotic and different from the usual meat and potatoes routine. Magazine ads pushed this as company dinner material, promising to impress guests with minimal effort. Today we mock the pineapple on meat trend, but back then it represented adventure and sophistication to country families who thought they were being worldly by trying something beyond their usual routine. Chicken Kiev. Before anyone heard of molecular gastronomy, country cooks were performing culinary magic with chicken Kiev, the stuffed, breaded, deep-fried chicken breast that exploded butter when you cut into it. This wasn't simple cooking. This was technique. Boneless chicken breast got pounded thin with a meat mallet until nearly translucent, then seasoned with salt, pepper, and garlic. The filling was a log of frozen herb butter, Real butter mixed with parsley, sometimes tarragon or dill, placed in the center of each breast. The chicken rolled tightly around the butter, sealed at the ends, becoming a neat package. Then came the breading process. Flour, beaten egg, seasoned breadcrumbs, repeated twice for a thick coating that could withstand deep frying. Into 350-degree oil they went, turning golden brown while the butter inside melted but stayed trapped. When done correctly, cutting into a chicken Kiev released a fountain of hot herb butter that pooled on the plate. This appeared at every special dinner party, impressing guests with its restaurant-quality presentation. It required skills most home cooks today don't have, proving the 1970s country kitchen could execute French techniques without any culinary school training. Steak Diane. When country folks wanted to feel fancy, without leaving home, they made Steak Diane. This wasn't backyard grilling. This was tableside drama translated to the home stovetop, proving you could do restaurant-quality cooking with nothing but a cast iron skillet and confidence. Thin-sliced beef tenderloin got pounded even thinner, seasoned with salt and pepper, then seared fast in a screaming hot skillet with butter. The real show started after the meat came out. Into that same pan went minced shallots, sliced mushrooms, and a splash of brandy that would sometimes flame up if you weren't careful. Exciting and slightly dangerous, just like the decade itself. Dijon mustard, Worcestershire sauce, and heavy cream combined into a glossy pan sauce that tasted like something you'd pay good money for downtown. The steak went back in just long enough to coat in sauce, staying pink in the middle. Fresh parsley scattered on top added the final touch. This made weekend suppers feel special, proving country cooks could master French techniques without culinary school. Today's home cooks rarely attempt it, intimidated by methods our grandmothers executed without thinking twice about it. Hamburger gravy on bread. Nothing says working-class country lunch like hamburger gravy on bread, the budget-stretching meal that turned half a pound of ground beef into dinner for 6 people. This started with browning cheap ground chuck in a skillet, breaking it into small crumbles as it cooked. Once brown, most of the fat got drained off, leaving just enough to make a roux. Flour went directly into the pan with the meat, stirring until it formed a paste. Then milk got added slowly while whisking constantly to prevent lumps. The gravy thickened as it simmered, becoming creamy and peppered heavily because that's what made it taste like more than it was. Salt, pepper, and maybe a dash of onion powder completed the seasoning. This got ladled over slices of white bread, the cheap squishy kind that soaked up gravy like a sponge. Some families called it S.O.S. Others just called it supper. It stuck to your ribs, filled you up, and cost maybe $2 to feed a family. Factory workers and farmers ate this regularly, not because they wanted to, but because it worked. Today's viral gravy trends have nothing on this original recipe that kept rural families fed through tough economic times. Surf and turf. When 1970s country families wanted to celebrate something big, a promotion, anniversary, or graduation, they broke out the ultimate splurge meal, surf and turf. This wasn't restaurant food trying to be fancy. This was the height of American excess translated to home kitchens. A thick-cut ribeye steak hit the broiler or grill, seasoned simply with salt, pepper, and butter. Meanwhile, frozen lobster tails, the only way most inland families could access them, thawed in cold water before being butterflied and broiled with more butter, garlic, and paprika. The timing had to be perfect. Overcooked steak was forgivable, but rubbery lobster was a crime against the grocery budget. Both proteins arrived on the same plate, usually with a baked potato drowning in sour cream and chives. This combination meal symbolized American prosperity and abundance, the idea that you didn't have to choose between land and sea. You could have both. It cost a week's worth of regular dinners, but delivered status and celebration. Country families attempting this at home studied magazine pictures and television commercials, trying to replicate steakhouse quality in their own kitchens. Tuna noodle casserole. Friday night in Catholic country homes meant no meat, and tuna noodle casserole solved that problem deliciously. This budget-friendly comfort food started with egg noodles boiled until tender, drained, then mixed with canned tuna, always packed in water, never oil for this recipe. The binder was cream of mushroom soup, that miracle ingredient that appeared in half of all 1970s casseroles. Frozen peas got stirred in still frozen, shredded cheddar cheese added richness, and everything combined in a buttered baking dish. The top got covered with crushed potato chips or breadcrumbs mixed with melted butter, creating a crunchy contrast to the creamy interior. Baked at 350 degrees until bubbly and golden, this delivered satisfying comfort on a tight budget. The tuna provided protein, the noodles offered substance, and the creamy sauce held everything together. Kids either loved it or hated it, no middle ground. For working mothers, this represented quick dinner salvation, assembled in 15 minutes and baked while homework got checked. Today's food snobs mock tuna casserole, but this fed millions of families affordably. Proving good cooking doesn't require expensive ingredients, just practical knowledge and cream of mushroom soup. Deviled ham sandwich. Deviled ham came in small tins, affordable and shelf-stable, transformed by the addition of mayonnaise, mustard, and pickle relish into a paste that filled sandwiches across rural America. The ham itself was processed meat, part mechanical separation, part actual ham, all efficiency. Mixed with creamy mayonnaise, sharp mustard, and the vinegary brightness of relish, it became something with personality. The flavor was salty, tangy, and vaguely smoky, filling your mouth with unexpected complexity. These sandwiches were church picnic staples, made by ladies' auxiliary groups and packed for outdoor gatherings. The deviled ham paste held together perfectly and didn't require refrigeration for hours, crucial for communities without reliable coolers. In Appalachian towns and rural southern communities, deviled ham sandwiches meant social occasions. Not fancy, but intentional. Women took pride in getting the spice balance just right. Fathers brought these to construction sites and fishing trips. Children opened their lunch pails, hoping to find these instead of plain bologna. What made deviled ham remarkable was its transformation from industrial ingredient into something that could impress at community gatherings, proving that skill with humble ingredients created real value and connection. Salisbury steak. TV dinners made it famous, but real homemade Salisbury steak was something entirely different, a comfort food that turned ground beef into restaurant-quality fare. Country cooks mixed ground beef with breadcrumbs, egg, and finely minced onions, shaping the mixture into oval patties that looked like real steaks if you squinted. These got seared in a hot skillet until deeply browned, developing a crust that held together when the gravy came later. The mushroom gravy was everything. Sliced mushrooms and onions cooked in the pan drippings. Then beef broth and a flour slurry created that thick, glossy brown sauce. Some added a splash of Worcestershire sauce or kitchen bouquet for deeper color and savory depth. The patties went back into the gravy to simmer, soaking up flavor while staying tender. Served over mashed potatoes or egg noodles. This delivered steakhouse vibes on a hamburger budget. It was fancy enough for company, but practical enough for Wednesday night. The leftovers made incredible hot sandwiches, smothered in that mushroom gravy. Today's frozen version can't touch the homemade original, which required actual cooking skills and attention to detail our fast food culture has mostly forgotten. Country Captain. Here's a forgotten recipe that deserves resurrection. Country Captain. The curried chicken dish that found its way from British India to American country kitchens through military wives and adventurous cooks who wanted something different on the dinner table. This wasn't your typical 1970s casserole. Chicken pieces got brown in bacon fat until the skin crisped up, then set aside while onions, bell peppers, and garlic softened in the same pan. The game changer was curry powder, that mysterious yellow spice blend most country stores carried, but few cooks really understood. It went into the pan with canned tomatoes, raisins, and sometimes almonds, creating a sweet, savory sauce that tasted unlike anything else on the rural dinner table. The chicken simmered in this mixture until tender, the meat falling off the bone. Served over white rice with the sauce spooned generously on top, it delivered complex flavors that challenged Midwestern palates in the best way. Some families loved it. Others thought it too strange and went back to fried chicken. But those who made it regularly considered themselves worldly, connected to something beyond their county lines. This proved country cooking could be adventurous, incorporating global flavors decades before fusion cuisine became trendy. Fried green tomatoes. Before the movie made them trendy, Southern country cooks were frying green tomatoes out of necessity, using up unripe tomatoes before the first frost killed the garden. This soul food classic turned a liability into a delicacy. Firm green tomatoes got sliced thick, about half an inch, then dredged in cornmeal mixed with flour, salt, and pepper. Some cooks added a buttermilk dip, first for extra coating. Into a cast iron skillet with hot bacon grease, they went sizzling immediately upon contact. The cornmeal crust fried up crunchy and golden, while the tart green tomato inside stayed firm and tangy. Never mushy like red tomatoes would become. The contrast was perfect. Crispy exterior, tart acidic interior, all enhanced by the smoky bacon fat. Served hot with ranch dressing or remoulade. This represented resourcefulness and refusing to waste food. End-of-season gardens produced pounds of green tomatoes that would never ripen. Frying them meant capturing summer before winter arrived. Today's farm-to-table restaurants serve these as appetizers at premium prices, but country cooks were making them out of practical necessity, turning potential waste into one of the South's most beloved comfort food dishes. Beef stroganoff. Before chain restaurants brought their version of fancy to the suburbs, country kitchens had their own idea of sophisticated dining, and beef stroganoff was it. This wasn't a ground beef shortcut. Real stroganoff started with actual sirloin steak, sliced thin against the grain, then seared fast in butter until it developed a crust but stayed tender inside. The pan drippings became the foundation for everything that followed. Sliced mushrooms went in next, soaking up that beefy flavor, followed by diced onions that turned golden and sweet. Then came the signature move, a generous dollop of sour cream stirred into beef broth, creating this tangy, velvety sauce that coated every strand of egg noodles underneath. Some cooks added a splash of cooking sherry they kept hidden in the back of the cupboard. Others swore by a teaspoon of Dijon mustard for sharpness. The result was pure comfort with a touch of class, rich and creamy with that distinctive tang that made it different from every other beef and noodles dish on the block. This was what country families served when they wanted to impress the new neighbors or celebrate promotion. It proved you didn't need to go downtown to eat well. If you're enjoying this trip down memory lane, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next one. Macaroni with butter and salt. Sometimes the simplest dishes tell the hardest stories. Plain macaroni with butter and salt wasn't poverty food by choice. It was survival cooking when money ran tight between paychecks. But country cooks elevated even this basic meal into something comforting. The pasta had to be cooked just right, drained while still steaming hot, then immediately tossed with real butter that melted into every curved elbow. A generous grinding of black pepper and coarse salt added the only seasoning. Some families added a splash of the pasta cooking water to make it creamy. Others stirred in a handful of Parmesan cheese if they had it. Kids who grew up eating this never complained. It was warm, filling, and ready in 15 minutes when parents worked late shifts. There was no shame in it. Just practical home cooking that stretched limited ingredients into something that filled bellies and felt like a meal. This represents thousands of 1970s families making it work with what they had, turning basic pantry staples into meals that still trigger powerful memories decades later. Today's mac and cheese obsession started right here, with butter melting into hot pasta in kitchens across rural America. Stuffed bell peppers. Garden abundance meant stuffed bell peppers appeared regularly on 1970s country tables, the vessel that turned leftover rice and ground beef into company-worthy dinner. Large bell peppers got their tops sliced off and seeds removed, creating edible bowls. The filling combined brown ground beef, cooked rice, diced tomatoes, onions, and seasonings, usually just salt, pepper, garlic powder, and maybe oregano. Some cooks added corn or black beans for stretching. The mixture got packed into the pepper shells, then arranged standing up in a baking dish with a bit of water or tomato sauce in the bottom to prevent sticking. Tomato sauce poured over the tops added moisture and flavor. Into the oven they went, baking until the peppers softened and the filling heated through, usually about 45 minutes. The pepper's natural sweetness balanced the savory filling, creating a self-contained meal that looked impressive on the plate. This represented the garden-to-table movement before anyone called it that. Fresh peppers from the backyard got transformed into complete dinners that satisfied everyone at the table. Fried green tomato sandwich. Late summer in rural Georgia and the Carolinas meant frost was coming, and gardens had to be harvested fast. Thick sliced green tomatoes were dredged in seasoned cornmeal, fried in cast iron until their exteriors turned golden brown and crispy, while the inside stayed firm and tart. Slapped between two slices of soft white bread with a smear of mayonnaise. This sandwich represented the thin window between summer and winter. The beauty wasn't just a taste, it was a texture. That crunch gave way to the tangy brightness of the barely ripe fruit, cut by the richness of the mayo. In small mountain towns and tobacco country, this sandwich meant resourcefulness. Nothing got wasted. Every tomato, even the ones that wouldn't ripen in time, became dinner. Families shared these at church socials, packed them in lunch pails for field work, and served them at supper when cash crops were being harvested. Today, the sandwich survives in Southern soul food restaurants, a reminder that creativity and hunger birthed some of America's greatest comfort foods. Meatloaf with mushroom soup gravy. Every country kitchen had a signature meatloaf recipe, but the ones topped with Campbell's cream of mushroom soup gravy achieved legendary status. This wasn't lazy cooking. It was genius innovation. The meatloaf itself combined ground beef, eggs, breadcrumbs or crushed crackers, diced onions, and a packet of Lipton onion soup mix for concentrated flavor. Some cooks added diced bell peppers. Others threw in shredded carrots to stretch the meat further. The mixture got packed into a loaf pan or shaped freeform on a baking sheet, then topped with ketchup, always ketchup, creating a sweet tangy glaze as it baked. But the mushroom soup gravy separated the amateurs from the masters. After meatloaf baked and rested, that cream of mushroom soup got heated with milk or beef broth, creating a thick savory sauce that made every slice infinitely better. Served with mashed potatoes to soak up the gravy. This fed families economically while tasting like real effort went into it. The leftovers made incredible sandwiches on white bread with extra gravy. This represents an entire generation's weeknight dinner solution, proving canned soup could be an ingredient, not an apology. Chicken Devon casserole. When 1970s country cooks needed to use up leftover chicken or turkey, chicken Devon casserole was the answer. This creamy, cheesy baked dish originated at a New York restaurant, but became home cooking legend. The base layer was blanched broccoli, bright green and still slightly crisp, arranged in a buttered baking dish. Sliced cooked chicken breast covered the broccoli. Then came the signature sauce. Cream of chicken soup mixed with mayonnaise, shredded cheddar cheese, lemon juice, and curry powder, that unexpected yellow spice that made it special. Some versions added sour cream for extra richness. The mixture poured over everything. Then breadcrumbs mixed with melted butter topped it all for crunch. Into a 350-degree oven it baked until bubbly and golden, the cheese melting into the sauce, the breadcrumbs turning crispy. This represented sophisticated home cooking. The curry powder adding exotic flair to an otherwise straightforward dish. Church potlucks featured at least 2 versions, each cook swearing theirs was the authentic recipe. Today it seems dated, but back then this solved the eternal problem of making leftovers taste like a brand new meal worth eating. Pork chops with applesauce. Something about the combination of pork and apple speaks to country cooking soul, and thick-cut pork chops with homemade applesauce delivered that pairing perfectly. This started with bone-in center-cut pork chops at least an inch thick, seasoned simply with salt, pepper, and maybe a bit of sage. Into a hot cast iron skillet they went, getting a hard sear on both sides that locked in juices and created a flavorful crust. Then the heat dropped, a lid went on, and the chops finished cooking slowly until just done. Overcooked pork was cardboard, but 1970s country cooks knew the timing instinctively. The applesauce was always homemade when possible, made from whatever apples the tree produced. Apples got peeled, cored, and cooked down with sugar and cinnamon until soft enough to mash. Some left it chunky, others made it smooth, served alongside the pork chops. The sweet tart applesauce cut through the rich meat perfectly, creating balance on the plate. This pairing appeared regularly on autumn tables when apples were abundant and pork was affordable. Today's grocery store applesauce in plastic containers can't touch the real thing. Swedish meatballs. Nothing says 1970s dinner party like Swedish meatballs simmering in a chafing dish. But before they became cocktail party food, these were serious country fare that filled plates at Sunday suppers. Real homemade Swedish meatballs started with a mixture of ground beef and ground pork, combined with breadcrumbs that had been soaked in milk until they formed a paste. You'd add finely minced onions, egg, nutmeg, and allspice. Those warm spices made all the difference between these and regular meatballs. The meatballs had to be small, about an inch in diameter, rolled between your palms until perfectly round. They get brown in butter, not oil, creating a golden crust that's sealed in the juices. The gravy was where the magic happened. Pan drippings combined with beef broth and heavy cream. Thicken with a roux until it coated the back of a spoon. The meatballs simmered in this sauce, soaking up flavor while staying tender. Served over egg noodles or mashed potatoes, this delivered rich, savory comfort with that distinctive Scandinavian spice profile. Country families with Swedish heritage guarded their grandmother's exact ratios like state secrets, each claiming theirs was the most authentic version you could find. Baked ziti. Every church potluck featured at least 3 pans of baked ziti, and somehow they all tasted different. This Italian-American comfort food became a country kitchen staple because it could feed a crowd without breaking the grocery budget. The process started simple enough. You'd boil a pound of ziti pasta until just shy of tender because it would finish cooking in the oven. While that drained, you'd brown ground beef with onions and garlic, then stir in jars of marinara, usually ragu or prego, sometimes homemade if the tomatoes had been good that summer. The layering mattered. Pasta on the bottom, meat sauce in the middle, then a mixture of ricotta cheese, mozzarella, and parmesan on top. Some cooks mix beaten eggs into the ricotta for extra binding. Into a 350-degree oven it went, baking until the cheese turned golden and bubbly and the edges got crispy and caramelized. The smell alone could bring kids running from 3 houses away. This was make-ahead magic that actually tasted better the next day, making it perfect for working mothers juggling jobs and family meals before anyone called it meal prep. You could assemble it the night before, refrigerate it, and slide it in the oven when you got home from work. Eggplant parmesan. Before everyone decided they hated vegetables, country gardens produced more eggplant than families knew what to do with. Eggplant parmesan was the Italian-American solution that turned a weird purple vegetable into something even kids would eat. The preparation was labor-intensive, but worth every minute. Eggplant got sliced thick, salted heavily, and left to drain for an hour to remove the bitter liquid. Then each slice went through a 3-step breading process: flour, beaten egg, then seasoned breadcrumbs. Into hot oil they went, fry until golden and crispy on both sides. The assembly looked like lasagna. A layer of marinara sauce on the bottom of a baking dish, then fried eggplant slices, mozzarella cheese, parmesan cheese, and more sauce. You'd repeat until you ran out of ingredients or dish space. Baked until bubbly. The cheese melted into the sauce while the breaded eggplant stayed surprisingly sturdy. This was how country cooks use up summer garden abundance, creating a meatless meal substantial enough to satisfy farmhands who've been working since dawn. The leftovers made incredible sandwiches on crusty Italian bread, a lunch option that rivaled anything you could get at the deli in town. Chili. Walk into any American home on a Tuesday afternoon in 1975, and you'd smell it before you saw it. That deep, smoky aroma of chili that had been bubbling on the stove since breakfast. This wasn't the quick version we make today in 30 minutes. Country cooks started with 2 pounds of ground chuck in a heavy Dutch oven, browning it slowly until the fat rendered out and those crispy edges formed on the meat. They'd add diced onions, letting them turn translucent and sweet, then dump in whole canned tomatoes that they crushed by hand right in the pot. The secret was layering the spices. Chili powder went in first, blooming in that hot fat to release its oils. Then came cumin, garlic powder, and here's where it got interesting: a shake of cinnamon that grandmothers swore by, but never admitted to using. Some families added kidney beans. Others considered that practically criminal. That debate could split a church congregation right down the middle. The whole pot simmered for hours, reducing down to a thick consistency that clung to your spoon. This was fuel for people who worked physical jobs. Factory workers coming off shift, farmers finishing evening chores, construction crews breaking for lunch. They needed something that stuck to their ribs and lasted through the afternoon. The chili we make today, even the good stuff, can't touch what came out of those cast iron pots that have been seasoning for decades. Beef pot roast with root vegetables. Sunday dinner in rural America meant pot roast, the slow-cooked centerpiece that filled the house with the aroma of home. This required patience and a heavy Dutch oven, 2 things every country kitchen had in abundance. A 3-pound chuck roast got seasoned generously with salt and pepper, then seared on all sides in hot oil until deeply browned. That caramelization was crucial, building flavor for the hours of cooking ahead. The roast sat in the pot while onions browned in the same fat, followed by beef broth. Sometimes a splash of red wine if the cook was feeling fancy. The liquid came halfway up the roast, never covering it completely. Into a 300-degree oven it went, braising slowly for 3 to 4 hours. Halfway through, carrots, potatoes, turnips, and parsnips joined the party, nestling around the meat to cook in those rich juices. The vegetables turned tender and sweet, soaking up beefy flavor while developing their own caramelized edges. The roast fell apart at the touch of a fork. The connective tissue transformed into silky gelatin that thickened the cooking liquid naturally. This represented gathering, family, and taking time to do things right in an era before everything became instant. New England boiled dinner. This traditional one-pot meal fed New England families for generations before making its way to Midwest country tables. The foundation was a corned beef brisket, that salty spice hunk of beef that came vacuum-sealed or from the butcher's brine barrel. Into a large pot it went, covered with cold water, brought to a boil, then simmer for hours until fork tender. The cooking liquid turned cloudy and salty, flavored by the pickling spices. About an hour before serving, the vegetables joined in: half potatoes, wedges of cabbage, chunks of carrot, and sometimes turnips or parsnips. Everything cooked together, the vegetables taking on the salty spice flavor of the cooking liquid. The result was humble but satisfying. Tender beef sliced against the grain, soft vegetables, and mustard or horseradish on the side to cut through the richness. This appeared regularly in country kitchens because it required minimal attention, made the house smell incredible, and fed a crowd from one pot. Leftovers got transformed into corned beef hash for breakfast, proving nothing went to waste. Today's Instant Pot versions cook faster, but miss something essential: the slow melding of flavors that made this worth the wait. Pepperoni rolls. West Virginia coal miners needed portable lunches that wouldn't spoil underground, and country bakers delivered pepperoni rolls, the regional specialty that kept miners fed and energized through long shifts. These weren't pizza rolls. They were serious food. Fresh bread dough got rolled flat, layered with stick pepperoni or pepperoni slices, sometimes mozzarella cheese, then rolled up tight and sealed. Into the oven they baked until golden brown, the pepperoni fat melting into the bread, creating pockets of spicy, savory intensity. The result was portable, filling, stable at room temperature, and packed enough calories to fuel hours of physical labor. Above ground, these became lunch staples for factory workers, construction crews, and school kids whose mothers knew how to stretch ingredients. Some bakeries made them fresh daily, selling out by noon. The best versions had crispy bottom crusts and soft tops, the pepperoni visible in spiral cross-sections when you bit in. Today, they're considered regional novelties, but in 1970s working-class communities, these were practical nutrition, proving country cooking understood workers' needs better than any corporate lunch solution ever could. Stack cake slices. Appalachian country cooking gave us stack cake, the labor-intensive dessert that doubled as lunch when times were tight. This wasn't a single cake, but multiple thin layers, sometimes 6 or 8, each baked separately in cast iron skillets, because few country ovens could fit a proper cake pan. The layers were more like cookies and cake, thin, dense, made with flour, sugar, eggs, buttermilk, and molasses. Between each layer went dried apple filling, made by stewing dried apples with sugar and spices until they formed a thick paste. The assembled cake sat for days, the moisture from the apple filling slowly softening the firm layers until the whole thing melded together into something cohesive. Sliced thin and served with coffee. This represented Appalachian wedding culture, where guests each brought a layer, and the taller the finished cake, the more popular the bride. It also represented poverty innovation, turning dried apples and basic ingredients into something celebratory. The taste was distinctive. Spiced apples, molasses depth, and that unique texture of softened cake layers. Today's bakers rarely attempt it, but it deserves to be remembered. These 25 meals represent more than just recipes. They represent an entire approach to cooking and eating that prioritized resourcefulness, community, and making do with what you had. We lost something when we stopped cooking this way. Stopped taking the time to layer flavors and let things simmer. Stopped understanding that good food doesn't require expensive ingredients or complicated techniques. Just patience, practice, and respect for the people you're feeding. If this brought back memories or taught you something new, consider subscribing for more food history. Thanks for watching.